Hey, and welcome to That's Not Okay, the podcast where we call out red flags and reclaim our love lives. I'm Alyssa, and today's episode, we're going to be talking about boundaries, what they are, why they matter, and why they make some people so mad. In my own personal life, have had a surprisingly large number of people feel offended when you draw any sort of boundary, when you say no. It just seems like we don't have a culture used to hearing the word no, hearing any limitation on what they want, what their goals are. And so this is super important. It's not only important to be able to say no or to hear the word no, but also to say the word no. I think a lot of people learned that no is a bad word in their families growing up. And so this is a really important episode. Being able to say no is crucial to your formation of your identity. No is a word that helps you to know where you begin and somebody else ends, and vice versa, where you end and someone else begins. So I think this can be really helpful for both people recovering from difficult relationships and people causing relationships to be difficult. So thanks for listening. Now let's start with, what are boundaries? Boundaries are the limits that you set to protect your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. They are not punishments for another person. They're information. It's like saying, here's what I can and can't accept. Here's what I will do to protect myself or care for myself if that limit is crossed. I myself am not always that explicit or that articulate, but the way I've typically drawn boundaries is by communicating when a behavior is problematic for me. And so I don't always say, I don't like this and I'm going to do this about it. I usually just say, this is not working for me. This bothers me. And so, needless to say, in difficult relationships, that's caused friction. But boundaries, again, they define where you end and another person begins. They clarify your responsibilities and needs. And in a healthy partnership, that kind of communication is appreciated. Everybody has wants and needs and feelings and expectations. And it should be celebrated and commended when someone can communicate those feelings, needs, desires clearly. But in a lot of cases, especially those people who have those broken attachment styles, broken mental systems, a boundary is like an affront to them, to their entitlement. They believe that they should have access to you on their terms. They should be able to do what they want to do because they have their own definition of right and wrong. And if yours collides with theirs, then the issue must be with you. But that is not true. Boundaries are not less about the other person and more about you defining who you are. So think of boundaries like a fence with a gate. You get to choose what comes into your space, what's acceptable in your yard, and what stays out of your yard. And so, again, boundaries are about you. They may collide with what another person wants to do. Another person might want to dump their trash in your yard. That doesn't make it okay for them to do that. So why are boundaries crucial for healthy relationships? Well, it's because they foster safety, clarity, and respect. When people know your boundaries, they can love you more authentically. So in a healthy relationship, both people will be able to communicate their boundaries and say, hey, I didn't like that tone of voice that you used. Will you please speak with me a little bit differently? Or, hey, I didn't like that you told so-and-so about something I shared with you in private or our private business. Could we please set a boundary together on what we disclose about our private relationship? These should be acceptable and comfortable things for a couple to work through. Because boundaries allow for mutuality. not one person is over-functioning while the other under-functions. Like, the person who just dumps their trash wherever they want, they're under-functioning. They're not having any limits. Their trash goes on the sidewalk. The trash goes in your yard. The trash goes in someone else's yard. They don't have any limits. And that makes you overfunction to try to get all that trash out of your yard. And maybe you even feel responsible because this is your person for cleaning up trash out of other people's yards that the person's distributing. This is not mutuality in a relationship. So good boundaries and respect for boundaries can make it where everybody's carrying their own weight. Boundaries also prevent resentment from building up because you're not silently sacrificing your needs so that someone else can continue to do whatever they want. Like, if I was constantly having to pick up my partner's trash out of my yard, other people's yards, and just clean up after them, of course I would feel frustrated. Of course that would build resentment. And so boundaries and respect for boundaries make it where everybody's carrying their own weight. And healthy people, again, they appreciate boundaries. They want to know how to love you well. So if you communicate a need, if you say, I like this, I don't like this, and the other person is open-minded and receptive and is like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I didn't realize how I was treating you made you feel that way, in a bad way. Then you have a very respectful partner, somebody comfortable with hearing the word no. But if you don't, then you have some other things to question in your relationship. Indeed, boundaries teach people how to earn access to the deeper parts of your life. So there's a Bible verse that says, the one that can be trusted with little, even more will be given to them. But the one who's not faithful with little, even what little they have, will be taken from them. And this is so true in human relationships as well. Like, if I can trust you in the little ways to respect my needs, to honor the boundaries that are a part of every relationship, honor the boundaries that are a part of a relationship with me, then I'm of course going to invite you deeper and deeper into my heart. I may even share the things that make me feel inadequate or unworthy, which we all have those areas that a beautiful relationship, a healthy relationship, is meant to build us up and encourage us out of those broken places. But you're never going to get into those intimate places with me by violating my boundaries. So that is why boundaries are so important. Now, let's turn and focus on how unhealthy people perceive boundaries and respond to boundaries. So often, people with those broken attachment styles, unhealthy people, they perceive boundaries as rejection, abandonment, or control. So instead of hearing, this is what I need to feel safe, they hear, you're bad, and I'm leaving you, or you can't do what you want to do. And that is missing the entire point of what a boundary is about. So some people will even respond with guilt trips. Like an example being, you used to be more flexible, now you're being so strict, or gaslighting, you're being dramatic, or even rage. You're so selfish to draw that boundary. Like that's not a healthy response or a productive response to a boundary. Enmeshed or controlling people will view boundaries as betrayal because you're stepping out of your role as their emotional caretaker or the person that's supposed to just receive from them willy-nilly, even if what they're giving you feels intrusive, invasive, or overstepping. Narcissistic or immature people often believe access to you is their right. It's not a privilege. And others may act confused, but it's often performative confusion. Like, I don't get what I did wrong. Like, why would this be a problem? And they do that to avoid accountability for their actions. So if you have explained why something bothers you and it happens even more frequently, you're dealing with someone with something completely pathological going on. Like, that is absolute disrespect, and you should definitely take note of it and recognize that you're dealing with someone who is offended or affronted by your boundaries and doesn't understand or is unwilling to accept that their conduct harmed you, and they refuse to be held accountable. And that does not make for a healthy partnership. So here's what boundaries sound like. And I'm not saying that you communicate your boundaries in a perfectly calm manner every time. Securely attached people, even healthy people, get frustrated, get angry, have their buttons pushed. It's what makes them healthy is that they are able to recognize when that happens and temper it back or step back and say, okay, I didn't communicate that perfectly. Let me try again. And in a healthy relationship, your partner will be receptive to those do-overs. But, again, here's generally what boundaries sound like. Like, I am not available for this conversation right now. I'm upset, I'm triggered, but I love you, and I'm going to come back and circle back to talk with you in 30 minutes. Give me 30 minutes to see where I'm at. Another would be I need some time. I I really can't process this right now. Let me shoot you a text in, 20 minutes and I'll let you know. Others would be hey, I didn't like how, this came across. This came across as controlling or offensive or invasive to me. And I need us to discuss that. These are healthy ways to set boundaries on conduct, behavior, and there's so many more. And I also want to talk about different types of boundaries. There are internal boundaries and there are external boundaries. So we've been talking about external boundaries, the boundaries between you and another person. There are also internal boundaries, and those are what you will or won't do. You should be able to say within yourself as you learn from your dating experiences, as you grow as a person and mature, I will not continue to repeat myself over and over again or discuss the same topic 30 times with somebody who clearly refused to take me seriously or engage with my feelings the first time. We are mature adults, and they should be able to retain the gist of what I was saying the first time. If they respected me, they would have listened. So that would be an adjustment that you can make in response to unhealthy relationship behaviors. Or I will no longer tolerate somebody coming into my space and disturbing my peace. If they do that, I will ask them to leave going forward. Or I will no longer have someone give me the silent treatment. I will walk away from a relationship where I am systematically treated with disrespect. These are beautiful internal boundaries that you can draw proactively so that you may learn retroactively from a relationship, but that you can proactively take into your new relationship, any relationship that you go into going forward. And doing it in a way that isn't bitter or isn't punishing to the next person. It's just now you know yourself a little better. You know what's less acceptable in your yard. So those are internal boundaries. And again, external boundaries are what you communicate to others. Please don't talk to me that way. Please don't ignore me. Please engage, whatever your boundary may be. And healthy boundaries don't push love away. They actually make space for real love to grow. The opposite of having boundaries is having no boundaries, which means that you and the other person are just like there, you don't really have an identity. You just kind of go with the flow. Even if something feels uncomfortable for you, you don't speak up. You are going along with things that just go against your values, your needs for the sake of the relationship. And that's not healthy either. You're not being authentic to yourself. You're not speaking up for what you need. And that means you're not really being yourself. So who wants to be in a relationship with somebody who's being fake? I don't. And I don't want to be fake for somebody else. Like, if they don't like the parts of me that have sensitivity, or my preferences, or my lessons that I've learned through my life, then we're not a good match. I don't want them placating me. I want them to come to me authentically with care and love for who I am. So tying it into the last episode on attachment styles, and tying it into how unhealthy people respond to your no's, to your boundaries, especially if you choose to like walk away. Like if your boundary is ending the relationship, that's the world that we're going to live in right now. Here is why you may not receive a clean break from somebody who has mistreated you in the relationship, but who won't leave you alone after it ends. So anxiously attached people see rejection and they feel it like a hook. So for anxiously attached people, love often felt inconsistent growing up, sometimes warm, sometimes cold. So now as adults, rejection feels familiar. It's not good, but it's familiar. So when someone pulls away or says no, their brain screams, I have to get their love back or I'm not enough. They may become more interested or even obsessed because they're trying to earn back safety and affirmation, just like they had to with their caregivers. So in their mind, your no means try harder because that's what they learned from their parents. If in the aftermath of a relationship, your ex just will not leave you alone, it's not necessarily a compliment. It's less about you and more about their own issues. I've certainly had these types of encounters in my past and didn't recognize why things were happening the way they were. So understanding that people's background and these unhealthy broken patterns can help you understand the why ending a relationship is so difficult. Avoidantly attached people, they see rejection as a challenge to their control. So avoidantly attached people often have an unconscious fear of vulnerability, but they still want connection. They just want it on their terms. So if someone sets a firm boundary or walks away, the avoidantly attached person feels like they're losing control. And sometimes they come back to try to work it out with you, not out of love, but out of a need to reassert power or soothe their ego. Because again, they don't really want connection unless it's on their terms. And they are the ones who get to decide when a relationship ends, not you. And so they may be more drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable, period, because emotional distance feels safer to them than intimacy. So in an odd twist, you moving on, you trying to get your life back in order, you having fun without them, this is like, a candle to or a light to like a fly. Like, it is so attractive. They like that you're like moving on without them, because like this is exactly what they want. You'll see in this category a lot of people who are voyeuristic. They may stalk you on social media. They're just watching you live at this point. Like, they're not even really engaging with your life that much. You're in their sweet spot. You're not trying to ask them for things, but you're still in their orbit. You once gave them attention. So you're going to see a lot of people who are clingy, avoidant attachment folks fall into that category. And in disorganized attachment, rejection activates the push-pull of their broken attachment style. So in disorganized attachment, or the fearful avoidant type, their issues are often rooted in trauma, especially when caregivers were both comforting and terrifying or withholding. So as adults, rejection activates both fear and craving. They feel pulled toward connection, but once they get it, they may push it away again. So they become more interested when rejected because it mirrors the chaotic emotional cycle they lived in as children. Come here, no, go away. Wait, please don't leave me. That's how a lot of abusive relationship dynamics are. As I said in either the first or second episode of this podcast, part of the abuse cycle is a honeymoon phase, and then things go from bad to worse, and then they get really bad, and then you're back in that honeymoon phase. Well, these, disorganized attachment people, they've been living that their whole life. So you pulling away just tells them, hey, reward is coming. Like, we're going to make up again, and I'm going to get that hit, that dopamine hit that I get every time, my primary attachment, my caregiver, comes back and reassures me of their love and that everything's going to be okay. So again, for them, for really all three of these broken attachment styles I've mentioned, rejection can create a dopamine spike in the brain, especially in people with anxious or disorganized styles. The uncertainty creates a reward loop. When you're finally seen or validated again, it feels euphoric. It is like such a relief, and it's a hit. So that's why people with wounded attachment sometimes confuse their intimacy, their intense feelings inside, their turbulence inside, with intimacy. Like, oh, I must be deeply in love with this person because they're all I can think about. Like, I want them back. I've lost it. I've lost them. And I had them once and it felt really good. And I didn't appreciate it when I had it. Like, that is not love. That's just their wounds speaking. So that's their brokenness. These are unhealthy behaviors. So rejection actually doesn't make healthy people more interested. Healthy people take your no and say, okay, I respect that. Like, we aren't working it out. Like, I see why you feel that way and I respect how you feel. But rejection does make wounded people more activated. So their system isn't seeking love. They didn't just reflect and realize, oh, you are the one after all. Like, that is not what's happening, even though that's how they may try to internalize it. It's them trying to resolve an old wound. A wound older than your relationship, a wound older than the breakup. It is absolutely an attachment wound that hasn't been healed. And so for the people who are perpetuating these behaviors, are exhibiting wounded attachment styles, and you recognize this in your conduct and your behavior, my recommendation is to learn about boundaries. There's a book called Boundaries by, I think, Charles St. Cloud. Oh my goodness, I'll put it in the description. But I've read it twice now, and it is a great book. You have to be comfortable with hearing no and saying no, and having the self-respect to know that if you're not working for somebody, that is okay. Like, you need to recognize these broken behaviors so that you can heal, so that you can get into a relationship where you respect when somebody is pulling away from you, and maybe for legitimate reasons. You have to be able to take accountability. You have to be willing to take blame. I know that your caregiver, your parent, either maybe didn't exemplify these behaviors for you, or didn't model good conduct or expect good conduct from you. But that doesn't excuse you now. You're an adult, and so do your research, and you've got to do the hard work of changing those broken neural pathways. You are a compilation of all the experiences that you've had, all the hurt, all the pain, and you can get better. I also want to say that sometimes people don't just fear closeness or abandonment. They fear both. And when someone wants connection but doesn't have the tools or the self to support it, they become unstable. They pull you in and push you away. They beg for love but can't receive it. And that is characteristic of disorganized attachment. And I know we've talked about all three wounded attachment styles as part of this boundaries talk, but I really want to hone in on the disorganized attachment in this moment. These are the behaviors that keep someone in a relationship way too long. And if you are experiencing a partner showing these things, it would take serious work for them to break those habits, change those patterns, recognize their woundedness. Oh my goodness, they would even have to accept that maybe their childhood wasn't what they remember it as, or the stories that their family systems tell them. Like I can say from what I've read, from what I've learned, from other resources, other podcasts, like narcissistic family systems are extremely dysfunctional, and they are breeding grounds for these wounded attachment styles, but they look like extremely close-knit families. There is some validation, there is some dopamine hits, and you feel really connected and protected if you stay in the system and play your role right. But there are strings attached to that, and that is that you are wounded, that you need the system in order to function, and that role that you've played within the system doesn't function outside of the system. Like your spouse, your future spouse, your romantic partner doesn't need the good son, doesn't need the loyal nephew. She needs somebody with his own identity, not a role that you've learned to play within a family system. Like, if I just make my parents happy, then all goes smoothly for me. They take care of all my needs. They buy me things. They take me on nice trips. Like, your spouse needs somebody who can say no to his family or her family. If you are the woman coming from a narcissistic family system who is perpetuating toxic, selfish behaviors. So just know that but I guess, sorry, went on a tangent, but narcissistic family systems have this like internal story that they tell themselves that they are a beautiful family, a healthy family. They may present it to the outside world that way, like perfect family photos, perfect everything. But in truth, it's just a lie. It's a story that you've told, because sadly that kind of system does not create independent, emotionally mature, healthy, securely attached people. Because secure attachment means that you're able to separate from your caregiver and still know that they're going to love you and care for you, even if you disagree on things, even if you do something that they wouldn't typically approve of. Like, that they're gonna feel the same way about you, because their care is not conditional. They don't give you the silent treatment when you have a bad attitude. Like, your parents are not punishing you for going through the typical developmental phases of teenage years and things like that. Like, you are not shamed for showing emotion. You're allowed to be your full and explicit self, and you're allowed to differentiate from your parents, and know that that does not make you a bad person. So just because your family's story has said, well, we're heroic, we're good people, we are the mature ones, we are the successful ones, we are the wealthy ones, we are all these wonderful things, like, the proof is in the pudding. Look at who you are. Look at what you've done outside of that system. Have you been independently successful? Have you been emotionally successful? Have you been relationally successful? Like, have you bred good value systems for yourself, or have you just kind of gone with the crowd, partied? Like have you avoided your emotional issues that literally everyone on the planet has? Are you just painting a veneer over all your issues? That's where you really get to discover if you are wholly integrated or just fractured as a person. So thank you for listening. Again, this episode was on boundaries. We touched on like why boundaries are important, what they are, and why unhealthy people don't respond well to them. And I hope this has been helpful to you. And if you have any questions or feedback, I'm eager to hear it. And know that just because something is familiar to you does not make it okay.